So next I'm going to talk about deleting duplicates within Excel. So to get started, we'll go ahead and copy this data set and put it in a new tab within our spreadsheet. And we'll do that by highlighting all the data in this first sheet here by clicking on this box in the corner. Then we will come somewhere here and right click and click on copy. Then next we'll come down over here and click on this plus to open a new tab within our spreadsheet. And then we'll come back to cell A1 and we will just paste the data there. So it should be essentially a duplicate of that tab. Now, another way to duplicate a particular tab, and I'll actually demonstrate this, if we go back to our original data set, the patient appointments one, if we right click on it and then go to move or copy, there's actually a few options here that allow us to duplicate it. And I'll actually go through all the different variants of this because I think they can be very helpful for a data analyst in the various different situations. So if we simply just want to create a new copy and put it within our existing sheet here as a separate tab, all we need to do after we've right clicked on this and gotten to this section here is to hit create copy, and then we can say move to end. So it's going to create a copy, going to move it to the very end of the sheet, and it should be the very last tab now. So if you click on OK, what we'll see as soon as we do that, now we have patient appointments 2, and it's at the very end. It's the third tab now on this particular spreadsheet. So that's variant 1. That's one way you can copy data. We'll do the same thing again, move or copy. Another option is, say you have 2 separate spreadsheets open, 2 separate of these windows, and you want to move data from one section, from one of those sheets to another worksheet. What Excel will actually do, it'll identify if there is one already existing. Say you have another document open, it'll identify that and you can click on it. And then what you would do is you would hit create copy if you want to duplicate it. If you simply just want to move the document and not create a duplicate of it, in other words, it won't exist on your original data sheet, you would not select this create copy. You would simply move it by default instead of creating a copy. And then lastly, the last option is if we want to create a brand new sheet based on data from this spreadsheet, we could also select this new book option. And then if we wanted to duplicate the data instead of moving it, we would check this box here. And as soon as I do that, what you'll notice is Excel will create a brand new worksheet with the data from the patient appointments. So that's a quick preface on this tool that's actually quite useful within our workflow in terms of duplicating data. Again, the first way you could do this is just by highlighting all the data, copying it. But sometimes using this move or copy option is really helpful, especially if you have a complex data set or you have like a lot of different rows, or if you simply just want to move it to another sheet very easily. This feature here, right-clicking, move or copy, can be very useful. So that's sort of the preamble here to copying our data. Let me go ahead and delete one of these just so we don't have any confusion. So at this point, we have a duplicate. We have a duplicate sheet here with the same data. And the reason I did this is I actually want to go ahead and delete duplicates on it. So I don't want to impact the data on our original sheet. I want to have that as a reference. So that's the purpose of the copy here. So if we go to the very beginning of this tutorial on the Excel basics, specifically about what each row represents, if we recall, what each row represents is a unique patient appointment. And we said that one particular patient can potentially have multiple different appointments. In other words, for each of these patient IDs, it's possible to see a given patient ID more than one time throughout this data set. In other words, one patient can have 10 appointments and we will see 10 rows within the data set. So in theory, if we were to delete rows within this data set based on duplicate patient IDs, we would expect rows to fall out of this data set. By contrast, we said that every single appointment ID in this data set will be unique, because what we're sort of looking at in each of these rows is a unique patient appointment. So we'd expect if we tried to delete duplicates based on the appointment ID for there to be no change, because there are no duplicates based on the appointment ID. So to demonstrate this, we'll start by highlighting all the data within the data set, and then we'll click on remove duplicates. And what will happen is we'll see this window come up here. And by default, we should keep this my list has headers option checked so that it's excluding the very first row here. And then by default, you actually see all these columns checked. And I will start by actually unchecking them, and I'll sort of explain how they work, all the items here on the pick list. But if we, for example, select column A, what we're telling Excel is only look at column A, and if you see a duplicate, patient ID, delete the very next one, keep the very first one, but any subsequent duplicates, get rid of them. So that's the way it would work. And if I actually hit OK, as we said before, considering patients can have more than one entry, patient IDs can have more than one entry on this listing, we would expect duplicates to fall out. And we'll hit OK, and what we'll see here is it removed 48,000 rows from this data set. Again, the very first patient instance is kept, and then every subsequent duplicate patient ID is removed. That's sort of the process in which that's the order of operations in which Excel works. So I just did that. I'm going to go ahead and undo what I just did. And now we should have, 110,000 patients. So I just undid that. Now, if we did the same operation here, we'll go ahead and click on Remove Duplicates. But now, instead, we do it on column B. As we discussed before, we expect really nothing to happen here because all the IDs, appointment IDs, should be unique. So we'll go ahead and select column B exclusively, and we'll click on OK. And as we said before, this is exactly what we expected. No duplicate values found. And then lastly, what we can do here to sort of drive the point home in terms of all the other options, what this is saying whenever all the columns are selected is it will only delete a row if it finds another match for, based on what it's saying here, column A, column B, column C, D, E, and so on and so forth. In other words, it will only delete a row if the patient ID for this first row here is a match across every single one of these values. So if there's another row in this data set that looks exactly like row 2, it'll delete it. And then the same thing for row 3 and 4 and 5 and so on and so forth. It'll only delete things if it's a perfect match across all of those different columns. So that's what this really means here, and that's a really cool feature of Excel, is not only does it allow you to delete duplicates, it gives you the flexibility on whether based on 1 row, 2 rows, 10 rows, or whatever really you specify. It has a great deal of flexibility. And from the perspective of a data analyst, depending on the situation, say you want to get a listing of every single unique patient, that gives you the flexibility. This feature gives you the flexibility to really hone in on that particular question. Say you want to get a listing of every single neighborhood, right? A unique listing. Well, again, this tool gives you exactly that flexibility. We'll do it right here very quickly. We'll go and we'll select column G. What we'll see is there's not that many different neighborhoods. There's only 81. So to reiterate, this is a very powerful feature because it gives us a tremendous amount of flexibility in terms of how we delete duplicates.